Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of short playthroughs of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Breakout, an all-time classic. The original Breakout was originally released in arcades in 1976, and it was a project developed by Nolan Bushnell, Steve Bristow and Steve Wozniak, assisted by Steve Jobs. Many of those will be names that you're probably already familiar with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs in particular moving on to do stuff with Apple later on. But we're not concerned with the arcade version today, because the arcade version was sort of from prior to the age of using microprocessors and so on. It's actually reasonably hard to emulate, so it's not on this collection. We've got Super Breakout that we've previously seen, but no sign of the original Breakout. It did get an adaptation to Atari 2600 though, and that was developed by a guy called Brad Stewart, who we last saw on this series developing the 2600 version of Asteroids and being one of the first games that used an 8K bank switch cartridge instead of 4K. Now, legend has it, according to Stewart anyway, that two people were up for the job of porting Breakout to the Atari 2600. There was Brad Stewart and there was his peer Ian Shepherd. And apparently the pair of them played a copy of Breakout on the arcade machine they had in the office. And from the sound of things, take this with a pinch of salt because this was Stewart telling the story, but he claims he absolutely decimated Shepherd at the game and basically won the rights to program Breakout for Atari 2600. Now, like most arcade ports of the period, the 2600 version of Breakout was more of a reimagining than a direct conversion. It also featured a bug in the PAL release in European territories where the ball would jump if you hit it in a particular place on the paddle. And rather than actually fixing that bug and reissuing the game, Atari decided to just address it in the manual and try and position it as a game feature. So this was the days long before patches and so on, so you couldn't just patch a cartridge for the 2600, so they would have to recall and then reissue all the cartridges. So that was seen as impractical at the time, so they just decided to make the best of what they got and sort of make something up. Oh, there you go. Got to give them points for creativity, if nothing else. And this was by no means an isolated incident. You might recall when we looked at Adventure, there was a bit in the manual about sometimes your magic doesn't work because, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, that's Breakout for the Atari 2600. Let's go play it. Okay, here we are again with Atari Flashback Classics, this time taking a look at Breakout, which rather boldly promises 12 video games. Here we are with Tom Selleck again, I think, playing something. Not entirely sure what's going on there. He's got a nice pair of tight-fitting trousers. Anyway, Breakout. Smash, pow, crunch. A brick wall appears at the top of the screen and your mission is to smash two walls off the playfield, one brick at a time. Use the controller to move the paddle across the bottom of the screen. With the paddle, hit the ball into the wall. Each time the ball hits the brick disappears and you score points. A player or team receives 5 balls per game. When you miss a ball with your paddle, the ball disappears from the screen. Press the red controller button to serve another ball. Yeah, so that's it. Basically, you just got to complete 2 levels of Breakout to finish this. Now, there are lots of different ways you can play, though. So you can play one player, attempt to destroy 2 walls using 5 balls, or a player can win by scoring the maximum number of points, which is 864. In 2-player games, 2 players take turns hitting the wall. In 3-player games, 2 players act as a team and play against a 1-player team. Just as in 2-player games, the 2 teams take turns hitting the ball into the wall. And then you can play 4-player as well. Some games rely on speed scores instead of point scores to win. A timer will replace the scoreboard in the upper left corner. Your objective is to destroy the wall in as little time as possible. And then there is the obligatory invisible mode as well. Okay. So, alright, here's the list of different variations here. So game 1, using a controller, smash through the wall and score points. Game 2 has steerable balls. So a bit like we've seen in things like bowling and stuff, you can actually direct the ball while it's in flight by moving. Game 4 is an invisible one. Game 5 is a timed one. Game 6 is timed with steerable balls. Game 7 allows you to catch stuff, and Game 8 is invisible with a timer. Breakthrough, these are the later games. Breakthrough is played the same way as Breakout games. The only difference is the ball action. Once the ball hits a brick, the ball continues to penetrate through the wall, hitting more bricks and scoring more points. So this is a sort of faster action version. You'll see how that works when we play it. Oh yeah, here we are. In the introduction, I mentioned the bug in the PAL version. And that last bullet point there, that is the bug. When the ball makes contact with the center section of the paddle, the ball will jump. Yes, it will. It's not supposed to, but it does. And they didn't fix it, so they put it in the manual. Good job, everybody. Right, let's play Breakout. Alright, Breakout, one player. Off we go. Now, this is a paddle-controlled game, so you have to get used to the sort of very twitchy paddle simulation you've got on this Nintendo Switch version here. And as always, I'll give my usual advice, which is that you should play by sort of gradually moving your thumb around the perimeter of the analog stick rather than just trying to push left and right. So if you sort of position your thumb at the left edge of the stick to go all the way left, and then just sort of rotate around the bottom edge of the circular divot that the stick is in, you'll have much more precise control than if you try and sort of twitch it like that. You can also use the D-pad, of course, but you can't be very accurate doing that. But the option is there if you do want it. All right, let's go. Launch the ball. So I actually like the 2600 versions of Breakout and Super Breakout much more than the arcade version, just because they feel a lot more fair. Like, your paddle size isn't ridiculously tiny like it is in the arcade version. And it just makes it much more fun, because you actually have a chance of hitting the ball. And there's still a risk of not hitting it. But it's lessened considerably. And you're much more likely to be able to, you know, complete a game of it. Whoops. Or not, if you're me, apparently. Nice use of colour in this game as well. Now, the original Breakout ran on a black and white screen. Except it did the sort of old trick that a lot of old black and white arcade games did, which is to have coloured bits of cellophane across the screen. Oh, God. Coloured bits of cellophane on the screen to simulate having colour. So this was very common practice at the time. So Taito's Space Invaders did it. Breakout did it. Let's have another go at that mode. I can do better than that, I'm sure. Super Breakout did it. Super Bug did it. We saw, so you've got the coloured car in the middle of the screen and that sort of thing. So until we had colour displays, that was widespread practice. So in some senses, this 2600 version is actually superior to the arcade original, because it could do colour natively. You didn't have to put any overlays on your television or anything like that. As long as you had a colour television, which was by no means a sure thing in the late 70s, of course. But if you had a colour television, then you would be able to play Breakout in full glorious colour. I like Breakout. It's bat and ball against a wall has always been a formula that I've really enjoyed. I've never been amazingly good at it or anything, but it's something that I've always had fun with. Like, a very fond early gaming memory of mine is playing Arkanoid on the Atari 8-bit, because that's a game that several different members of my family enjoyed. So I enjoyed it, my brother enjoyed it, my mum enjoyed it. My dad didn't play it because my dad didn't play video games. He only played Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that's not a game. I joked, father. Yeah, my dad was someone who was interested in the concept of video games, but not necessarily in actually playing them for himself. So Alright, so that was that initial version of Breakout. Let's try it with a steerable ball. So what this means is once you hit it, you get the ridiculous sight of being able to wibble it around with your paddle while it's in flight, which is bonkers. So it still bounces on the same trajectory that it was, but it sort of moves with your paddle while it's on the way up. So you can sort of make it go where you want it to a bit more. You can't steer it on the way down, so you've still got to actually hit it. But on the way up, it just means that you can take aim for specific parts of wall that you're trying to get rid of. Doesn't make a ton of sense, but, you know, it didn't need to, because it was fun. It's just a fun variation on the Breakout format. It does take a bit of getting used to, though, because it's quite a strange feeling when the ball just sort of suddenly starts accelerating along with your paddle. Whoops. Yeah, it's when it gets up to those top layers and suddenly accelerates to that ridiculously fast speed. That's when it really gets difficult. Okay, so that's the steerable version. Now we play catch version. So catch version. If you press the fire button, then you can catch it. Then you release the fire button and let it go again. And so on. And so this makes for a sort of slightly more sedate game. You can take your time and aim a little bit more precisely. Of course, if you don't want to do that, you can just, miss the ball completely, like I just did. Or you can just let it bounce off normally if you want to. But yeah, if things are getting a bit hectic for you, just hold down the fire button, catch, and do it that way. So that might actually make it a little bit easier once you get into the speedy part of the wall. Which is sort of the top 3 layers, I think. Oops. God, I'm useless at this. So bad. So very bad. I do really like the idea of the team games in this. The sort of simultaneous cooperative play that those involve. That's a really cool idea that wasn't... I don't think it was present in the arcade original anyway. I somehow doubt it was. But again, it's an example of how the 2600 sort of encouraged social play. Alright, here's the invisible mode. Oh my god, where's the wall? Oh no! So it flashes up very briefly when you hit it, but other than that, you are in the dark. I don't know why it became obligatory for so many 2600 games to have an invisible mode in them. It's just a sort of fascinating concept, because again, it's another one of those things that doesn't really make any rational sense. But it's certainly an interesting twist on the usual formula. And it works better in some games than others. Like in combat, it works really well. We haven't got to combat yet, have we? But yeah, in combat, it works really well because it really allows you to play a sort of tactical, stealthy game where you are constantly trying to fake out your opponent and play psychological war games with them and that sort of thing. It works really well. In this, I don't know, it's kind of a gimmick. But I guess it does make for a sort of interesting twist on the usual style of play. In fact, in some ways it's quite nice because it sort of takes the wall away as a distraction, so you can just concentrate on where the ball is and making sure that you end up in the right place to be able to hit it back. Especially when it's going at high speed like that. Which, as we said, under normal circumstances is quite hard to return. Okay, so I think those are all the basic versions. So then we have the timed versions. We'll have a quick go at one of them. It's not going to really matter all that much because I can't actually finish the level. But as you see in this one, you don't have a score, you just have a timer ticking away. So this is really intended for those who can reliably clear their way through the two walls. And they can then sort of challenge themselves to speedrun it, basically. But for those of us with merely mediocre skills, such as myself, it's little more than a depressing reminder of the fact that we can't even finish one level. Quite a good streak going on there. Not that it matters. I guess success in this game is just about sort of being able to anticipate where the ball's going to go. Because the physics model is so limited in this, there's only like a certain number of places that the ball can possibly end up at any one time. So as long as you can anticipate that and have the dexterity to move your paddle into the appropriate place to catch the ball, then you're all good. Alright, so let's skip through all these. Right, we then get on to Breakthrough, which is this mode here. Where it goes... It makes for a much more fast-paced game, but it's also a little trickier to aim at specific things because it doesn't bounce off anything. Oh, hitting the blocks at the top makes your paddle get smaller as well, doesn't it? That's rude. As if it wasn't hard enough already. Let's try Breakthrough with an invisible wall. I'm not standing for that. Again. Start again. So you actually get to see the wall for a bit longer in this one because it's flying through the blocks rather than just hitting one and then bouncing straight off it. So in this mode it's easier to get high scores, but it's actually harder to play well. I don't know. Because your ball goes straight up to the top of the screen and straight into the part where it accelerates and makes your paddle shrink. That actually makes it quite a bit harder. Although as you can see, your points do rocket up much more quickly than they do in the standard Breakout mode. Oops. Oh, I think it's if it hits the top of the screen it shrinks, doesn't it? One more try. And doing very poorly. Yeah, I suck. I know. I think that's probably a good time to leave that there, isn't it? That was Breakout. A game I do still like coming back to, actually. I think I prefer Super Breakout on the 2600, but this is still a nice game as well. Super Breakout is probably a little better for the single player. The multiplayer modes in this one are cool, though. Unfortunately, we can't really explore those today with no one here to play this with me, but yeah, give them a try if you get the chance. They're worth a go. It's an interesting experience. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.